What's good, YouTube? It's me, your boy Squiddy'S. So I'm putting together this ultimate sprite guide because I know it's going to be a super popular deck. A lot of players are going to be playing it, obviously being the best deck for the next format or two at least. So I figured I'd put together a little guide just to show you guys how the deck works. This is part one. It's going to be intro, so very basic. We're going to go over all the cards and then do some of the generic basic combos. So yeah, definitely follow this. It's going to be a 10-part series, but if you guys know all the cards already, feel free to skip ahead to the next part. So starting off, we're just going to dive into the main engine. Obviously, we have the Sprite Blue, searches monsters, Sprite Jet, searches any sprite, spell, or trap, and then Sprite Starter, which is the quick play that special summons a sprite monster from deck, and then you lose life points equal to that monster's attack. Obviously, these cards are like the main bread and butter of the deck. As long as you can special summon either of these or activate Starter, you're basically well off into your engine. The one thing to know about starters, you do lose life points. So with this deck, you definitely want to play really fast, or as fast as you can, because if you do go into time game 3, you're at a huge disadvantage because you're taking damage from starter on your turn to start things off. And then on top of that, this deck has a really hard time putting damage on the board, so it might be a huge struggle if you're unable to do some damage. You're just going to lose in time because your own starter dealt some damage to you. So yeah, that's something to watch out for. These cards are obviously all level 2s, so this deck works off of level 2s. Basically, when you control any level or rank 2 monster for either blue or jet, you're able to special summon them from your hand as an inherent special summon, so that means it doesn't start a chain. You just flop it on the table, and then the effect would activate, allowing you to add a sprite card from your deck to your hand. So yeah, super helpful to remember that these ones work with the rank, so the XYZ monsters. Whereas the supporter cards, Sprite Red, Sprite Carrot, and Sprite Pixies. Sprite Red and Sprite Carrot, similar to Blue and Jet, you can special summon them if you control a level 2 monster or a link 2 monster. So instead of rank 2 monster, for Red and Carrot, you can do it when you control a link monster on the field as opposed to a XYZ. Whereas Pixies is still a rank 2 monster, so it's just like Blue and Jet there. These cards are supporters because they don't really do anything in terms of giving you card advantage. Red negates any monster effect if you tribute a level, link, or rank 2 monster. And then if you happen to tribute a rank or link 2 monster, you can actually negate the effect and destroy the card. Whereas Carrot, it does it for spells and traps. So if you tribute a level 2 monster, it negates that spell or trap's effect. Whereas if you tribute a link or an XYZ monster, it actually negates and destroys. So one thing to note about these cards is that they only negate the effects of cards, which can be good or bad. So it's kind of like Therion King Regulus, whereby if your opponent activates something that can only be activated once per turn, for example, Rite of Aramesir, and you respond with Sprite Carrot, tributing a level 2 monster, that would negate the effect, meaning they cannot activate a second copy of Rite of Aramesir because you negated the effect, not the activation. Whereas if you had a card like, Baron de Fleur, where it negates the activation of a card, they can actually activate that again, a second copy, because the activation was negated. So this negates the effect. So it's good in that sense. It stops your opponent from activating cards that are only once per turn if they happen to open multiple copies. Another thing to note, though, when this is bad, is when you use it on continuous effects. So things like continuous trap cards, so floodgates, continuous spell cards, or field spell cards. Because you're negating the effect, if you try to do it to the activation and you tribute a level 2 monster with Carrot, that card still stays on the field. So if my opponent uses Skill Drain, I chain Sprite Carrot, tributing a Sprite Red, for example. The Skill Drain would resolve, and it would stay on field and negate all monster effects. So in order to circumvent that, you definitely want to tribute a link or a rank 2 monster, so then you can negate the effect and destroy that card. Otherwise, it will stay on the field and just chill there. So good thing to watch out for. And then Sprite Pixies, it's not a super common one, but it has been picking up a lot of popularity recently just because people are realizing that this card does put in work. Essentially, it's an honest-like effect. You can discard it from your hand to boost the attack of one of your sprite monsters and defense equal to that monster's attack that it's battling. So again, if you battle like a Blue Eyes White Dragon, you can discard this in the damage step to gain 3,000 attack for your Sprite Red. It's also kind of useful when you play cards like Dagusto Phoenix because the attack gain is until the end of the turn. So it works on any of your level, rank, or link 2 monsters. So you essentially, if you attacked a Blue Eyes White Dragon with Daigusto Phoenix, you would gain 3,000 attack for the first battle, so you do 1,500, and then it would retain the 3k, so it'd be 4,500. You could attack directly for 4,500, putting in a total of 6,000 damage, for example. Obviously, the bigger the attack of the monster that you're battling, the better, because it does gain that attack for the second attack. And it's just super useful because this deck does have a lot of struggling against getting rid of bigger monsters, for example. A lot of times they are able to go into battle phase and swing over your Sprite Red, which might be threatening, but you can protect by using Sprite Pixies for you to gain defense in the damage step. So it's a cool little thing. Obviously, it's searchable with Sprite Red, so it is kind of useful in that niche little scenario there. Next thing are the utility cards. So we have Sprite Smashers. This card allows you to banish any card non-targeting. It does have 3 effects, but the only one that's usually relevant for pure Sprite is the one that banishes. Essentially, the cost is to banish a Sprite card from your hand or your graveyard, and then when it resolves, you're able to banish one level, rank, or link 2 monster you control, and any card that your opponent controls. So that does not target. Obviously, if they get rid of any link, rank, or level 2 monster that you control, it does not resolve without. It does not resolve with effect because it does have to banish both cards. But this is super useful because it is a searchable utility card that gives you an out to things like Mystic Mine, as well as being a back row interruption. So if your opponent plays something like Dark Ruler, you still have a way to play. Whereas if you search like Starter, for example, your effects are negated, so it doesn't really do a lot. Sprite Gamma Burst is one that quick play spell card. All level, rank, or link 2 monsters currently on the field gain 1,400 attack and defense until the end of the turn. And then the other effect is in the graveyard. During the main phase, you can banish this card from your graveyard, target one level, rank, or link 2 monster you control. It gains 1,400 attack until the end of your opponent's turn. So why is this card good? It seems bad, obviously, because, like attack defense modifiers in Yu-Gi-Oh! Generally are not that very good. But again, this card is searchable off of Jet, and then it boosts all your attack by 1,400 attack. All your monsters. So it's super useful against, matchups like Tearlament, where they have Winda and Dragostapelia on board. While being able to, go blue and then special summon Jet, add Gamma Burst, it bumps all your monsters by 1,400. So Jet becomes 27. We can crash that into the window or the Dragostapelia. Blue becomes 25, so we can swing over Windows. So it's like a 1-card answer to big floodgate monsters that just happen to be on the table. One thing to note is that this does affect both players, so it's terrible in the mirror match because it does make everything gain that attack. Another thing that this is good at is pushing for game. This deck has a lot of trouble pushing for game, doing big damage. Which is where this card can come in. If you have a board full of 5 sprites, you can just activate Gamma Burst. Everything gains 1,400 attack, and all of a sudden you have lethal on board. So something to note, probably not the best main deck card just because it is awful in the mirror match and it is somewhat of a brick if you do happen to open it, but it is a great utility card if you are able to fit that in your side deck. And then the last card is Sprite Double Cross. This is a card that's OCG only. It does not come out until the next set, which is Darkwing Blast in October. Essentially, it's a Monster Reborn or a Change of Heart. Super, super broken, but again, it's OCG only, so it's not really relevant. I'm just going to go over more TCG stuff in this video. Just for the next format or two. So something to look out for. Now we talk about engines. So engines that you mesh with this deck, obviously the first one that comes to mind is a Frog engine, because Swap Frog, being a level 2 that can be special summoned off of Gigantic Sprite, allows you to dump Ronin Toad in the graveyard, and Swap Frog's not actually once per turn, so you can continuously dump frogs. Ronin Toad allows you to banish any frog monster from your graveyard to special summon itself back. These two being level 2s, obviously allows you to make rank and link 2s super, super easily by reusing them, because neither of them are once per turn. Swap Frog obviously allows you to make Totally Awesome as well, which combined with Sprite Elf allows you to have double Totally Awesome, because you are able to revive that during your opponent's main phase after you use your first negate. So this engine is obviously a no-brainer. You add that into the deck. Swap Frog also has the additional ability to bounce any monster that you control as a cost to allow you to normal summon a frog as an additional normal summon. You do not need any frog monster in your hand to activate this. You're just able to activate it. So it's super, super relevant when you want to bounce back sprites to your hand, for example, blue, to reuse. Or you can bounce back things like Ash Blossoms, things like hand traps that you can special summon using cards like Crystron Halka from your extra deck. So it provides that utility toolbox. You're able to bounce things as a cost. Your opponent can't really respond efficiently to that effect. And then the last one's Dupe Frog. So a lot of people are playing this as a 1-up because this card can be special summoned during your opponent's standby phase using the effect of Totally Awesome to detach a material to special summon any frog from your deck. It has 2,000 defense, and the other effect is while this card is on the field, your opponent cannot target any monsters for attack except for this one. So what happens is when you have Sprite Elf, Totally Awesome, and you special summon this in the standby phase, they might have something like a Dino Wrestler Prankatops. You know, it has like 2,600 attack. All of a sudden, they cannot attack over the Totally Awesome to, you know, bait the negate. Now they have to attack the Dupe Frog. And then the other fact is when it is sent to the graveyard, you can add one frog monster from your deck or graveyard to your hand. But bear in mind, this is an old text. It says when this card is sent to the grave, you can. So it can miss timing. If you're using this to link off into a link monster, for example, you do not get the effect because you would miss timing because it says when this card is sent to the field of graveyard as opposed to if this card was sent. But again, it's a cool little niche interaction. Cool little card that gives you more bonuses, another name as a frog to banish for Ronin Totem. But I don't personally play it because I don't think it's good enough. I feel like it's somewhat of a brick, but it can be good or bad depending on the format and if people are siding cards like Dino Wrestler or Alpha, for example. Other starters we play, Deep Sea Diva. So this one is obviously a no-brainer. It's a level 2 tuner. When this card is normal summon, you special summon another copy from your deck to the field. You can also do cute plays like special summon an Atlantean Heavy Infantry, make a Cat Shark, and then when Cat Shark detaches as a cost, Heavy Infantry allows you to pop any card on the field. So like cute things, but obviously being a tuner is super, super relevant because you can make Halp. It's useful when you say you have a Nibiru on the board, you summon Diva, and they happen to somehow want to stop the Diva. You can instantly make Halp to special summon the other Diva to go full sprite combo. And obviously being able to Halp into any hand trap like Ash Blossom to bounce back with Swap Frog is super, super good, especially in the tier limits matchup or matchups where you know they're not playing Nibiru. So you're always going to have that option to make 5 summons, but also special summon an Ash that we can bounce back with Swap Frog to have the extra Ash Blossom as padding in our hand in case they play something like Dark Ruler, or just, you know, being good in general as a good generic hand trap. Other card, obviously, is Nimble Beaver. When this card normal summoned, you can special summon another copy of Nimble Beaver from your deck or graveyard. So this is where it's slightly better than Diva in that you can special summon back from the graveyard if you happen to, you know, be in the grind game where your 2 beavers are in the graveyard. You add back the 3rd copy using Toad, and then on your turn you can special summon Beaver and special summon one back from the graveyard. Obviously, the trade-off is this card is not a tuner, so you cannot make Halq easily. But the other thing is there's a card called Nimble Angler, where when that card is sent from deck or hand to graveyard, you can special summon 2 copies of Nimble Beaver from your deck. So that's super relevant in the next format when this new card called Sprint comes out because it allows you to foolish any level 2 monster from your deck, which allows you to summon Beaver. But, you know, if you happen to play cards like the Adventure Engine in this deck, you can actually discard the Angler and then special summon 2 Beavers for free from your deck. So Beaver's a cool little card. If you don't play Halq in your deck, definitely probably the better option as opposed to Diva. There's also other cards like Dark Beckoning Beast. This card, when it's normal summoned, you can add a copy of Opening of the Spirit Gates from your deck to your hand. Opening of the Spirit Gates, when it's activated, allows you to add another copy of Dark Beckoning Beast. And then the on-field effect of Dark Beckoning Beast is it allows you to normal summon an additional normal summon for a 0-attack Fiend monster, which happens to be exactly the 2nd copy of Dark Beckoning Beast. So we automatically put 2 level 2s on board using 1 monster. Similar to Diva or Beaver, only we're not special summoning. We're just normal summoning, so it's very good as an out against Winda, because obviously Winda would lock you into special summoning, so you cannot out it. But if we have Beckoning Beast, we can just make something like a Sky Cavalry Centuria to bounce the Winda. But the trade-off is it's not very good against cards like Tier Limits Meta Noise or cards that, you know, happen to destroy your first normal summon, because if they do get rid of this normal summon, it's vulnerable. We don't have the effect anymore, so we cannot normal summon the additional Dark Beckoning Beast, whereas Deep Sea Diva and Nimble Beaver instantly put the 2nd body on board. So even if they want to negate, get one of the bodies off the board, we still have the other body, so we can special summon the Sprite monsters from our hand. Opening Spirit Gates also has a 2nd effect that's cute, where you can discard a card to target 1 0-attack Fiend monster in your graveyard to special summon it back. So it is a pseudo extender in that you can continue to recur the Dark Beckoning Beast as long as you have cards to discard from your hand, you know, as follow-up or as an extender. There are also other starters. There are a bunch of other engines that you can play. You can check out my other video for the different engines you can play. You know, you can play Live Twin, Tri Brigade, Agents. You know, there are a bunch of like good level 2 generic monster engines, archetypes that you can happen to mix with Sprite. But in this, the purpose of this video is just making like very generic, tailored towards pure Sprite kind of introduction. Next, we have some power spells or consistency spells, I like to say. You can play the pot. So Pot of Prosperity, that's like a lot of the players go to. You can banish 3 or 6 cards from your extra deck. And you know, Sprite having an extra deck that's super flexible, it doesn't really matter if you happen to banish cards. You can banish a lot of cards that you don't really need. You know, cards like IP Masquerena, Unicorn, that might not come up, you know, immediately in the game, and then we just happen to add a good starter to our hand, because this deck does sometimes brick. You get hands where you have like 4 hand traps and like 1 sprite blue that you can't do anything with, because of the fact that it does typically run a high hand trap engine count. So Pot of Prosperity kind of fixes that. There's also Pot of Desires, which is my personal favorite. I feel like being able to draw 2 cards is super important. A lot of players don't like this card because you do banish, you know, a lot of your one-ups like Ronin Totem, so preventing you from going to Totally Awesome. You can banish Sprite Red, banish Sprite Carrot, so on and so forth. But I happen to think that this deck is a lot like Pure Zoo, and it's a lot like Gadgets, in a sense that your engine is just like endlessly replacing itself. You just essentially want to have hand traps, being able to play, and then whittle down your opponent with hand traps or negates, and then just keep recurring your engine. So I feel like you don't necessarily need the one-ups like Sprite Red or Totally Awesome. You know, if one or the other gets banished, we can just pad our board by using the other option that's not banished. So for example, if I banish Ronin, I can special summon back my red with Elf and then just have a bunch of hand traps, and it's more or less the same thing. I'm stopping my opponent from playing, I have hand traps. On my turn, I just do the same thing over and over and whittle them down. Other thing is Triple Tactics Talent, which is a super popular card now because in this format, a lot of cards activate in the main phase. We have hand traps. We have cards like the Tearlaments that happen to fuse during your main phase on your turn to disrupt you. We have Totally Awesome and Sprite Elf, which both activate in the main phase usually to negate something. So this card allows you to either rip into your opponent's hand, for example, with the Sprights, especially because one hand trap never stops this deck. Let's say they're stopping my Sprite Blue, well then I'm just going to make Gigantic and still continue the combo. If they use something like Effect Veiler, I can activate Triple Tactics Talent, look at their hand, rip something out, rip another hand trap, and then proceed to full combo. Going second is super, super good. You know, you can draw and take standards, or you can steal an opponent's monster. I could steal my opponent's Baron, pop a card, and then normal summon an Effect Veiler, and make Halp and special summon a level 2 Diva, make Gigantic, and that's full combo. So it does help, you know, when your hand is really bad. You have like hand traps, you want to get into your combo. Triple Tactics is a way to do that as well with Halp.